Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Kavanaugh. I'm a practice executive here at MicroStrategies, and I'm here with Bob Claybrook, who leads our hybrid IT practice for MicroStrategies. And we're here to have a conversation today around how hybrid technologies are really enabling organizations to embrace a world beyond the crisis that we are experiencing, and really focusing in on how we're evolving from optimized in that hybrid world to resilient, and really taking into consideration that anti-fragile mindset to really support and drive business operations. So, Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Claybrook. 25 plus years of leading technology teams, currently working with the hybrid practice here at MicroStrategies to really try and work with multiple clients and take those years of experience and really apply them to our clients and our businesses. So just really, as the technology landscape continues to change radically, it's difficult to keep up with. So I think taking that experience and applying it to the current business problems in the event that we're facing today, obviously with COVID, is extremely rewarding and challenging and valuable. So I'd like to stick with that. And then from MicroStrategies perspective, MicroStrategies is a technology solutions provider, enabling business by leveraging technology investments to drive business outcomes. It's really all about optimizing business process or creating effective and efficient digitization or digital processes. Bringing the right level of technology or compute, hybrid technology, which is a focus area for me to solve the problem, to optimize, and again, elastic capacity, just in time, whatever you want to refer to it as. And then from an analytics perspective or from a data-driven perspective, really taking the data that's generated from those processes and systems and injecting that back into the business to drive value and to optimize that business value. So, and then the last thing we like to do is try and help people operate their environment. So at the end of the day, if there's a need or something that there's a struggle with or a resource challenge, we'll apply resources or folks to help everyone out and really, again, just optimize and drive efficiency.
That's great. Well, I'm excited to be part of the conversation with you today, Bob. And I know that really the focus for our conversation as we had was really how organizations today are really embracing, hybrid technology and in a way to be able to help organizations evolve beyond this crisis. And I know we're really focusing on how we're leveraging that hybrid technology to really evolve from that optimized world that we've been experiencing to really that more resilient and really driving towards that anti-fragile business to really help organizations drive those business operations and achieve business outcomes, like you said. So I really just would be curious from your perspective, technology perspective, what really drove us to become so optimized from a technology perspective?
Really, I think, you're going back 20 years, but it was expectations and service level agreements that we, wanted to optimize and have the most effective use or most availability of the technology, right? So when you start to look at that and you compare that with the cost to do so, duplicating everything as an example, and really trying to deliver effective, efficient solutions and consistency, right? We created rigidity in the process. So I think that's where we, when you look at a lot of systems that are around today, that's really what's come about. And really it's about that rigidity, when we have experiences like we do today with COVID, is how do the systems and processes handle that? How can they bounce back?
So really the expectation as technology really became very interwoven, I would say, I guess within organizations, the expectations of the technology teams were just so significant that they really had no choice but to optimize. Is that really what you experienced?
Yeah, that's what I experienced most definitely. It was the expectations of the business teams, right? And the consistency of the performance of the solutions. And then you had to, again, you weigh that against the cost. You had to optimize everything down to the cost level. You couldn't have everything for everybody. I think the one thing where we are today is really decoupling that and decoupling the technologies and or call it loosely coupling the solutions that we utilize today.
So yeah. So what values, when you optimize, what values did they drive for the organization? What were some of the benefits that you experienced as you led? You clearly played very strategic roles and I'm sure you probably were pushing some of your teams for that optimization. What were the benefits that you were trying to achieve with that?
Again, continuity, right? So zero downtime, availability of systems. E-commerce systems became available again 20 years ago. You don't want the website down; they're open 24/7. So that was the expectation that really became of everything, right? Both internal and external public-facing solutions. There was no downtime anymore, and again, an expectation of always-on availability. And again, with that, it creates flexibility, but at the same time, to deliver that level of service, just a few years ago, it was expensive at the end of the day. So the cost rose, and we had to think about other ways to accomplish those things. And it's really where, how the public cloud became known as part of our world, part of our technology, the flexibility that it gives you.
So yeah, there's one of the questions I would ask. So what were some of the downsides? I mean, so what were some of the challenges? You got all this optimization. What did you experience as a technology leader that constrained you as a result of that optimization?
The rigidity and the connectivity. So as things became more open and the connectedness continued to expand to all of our daily lives, from the cell phones that we carry to the cars that we drive, you start to talk about all those data points to try and have that connectedness across those call them ERP platforms, those legacy systems that we utilize in business. That was really where the rigidity comes in. So it was very challenging to be able to connect things together because we had that optimized stack that we were running to provide those service levels that were expected by the business teams.
So as the demands of the business increased and they were forced to really deliver, and obviously the disruption of technology has been increasing, it continues to be increasingly greater in organizations, and the demands of organizations to respond to different companies that are coming in, able to do things more quickly and more dynamically. How did the demands of the business really have to change as a result of that?
I think that the business demands started to change, and then when you look at what drove that change is born on cloud companies. So when they had the capability to come in and compete with large organizations, and they didn't have to build out this technology infrastructure because everything was software defined, or just in time, as buy the drink, however you want to say that. It's just a just in time technology software defined solution. So it really allowed smaller organizations to compete, and I think that's the paradigm shift when we talk about public cloud. That's what it is. Again, software defined resources that are there for you to utilize and do anything you need for your business. You don't have to have them sitting there 24/7 at the end of the day. Now, you do pay a price for that, and per slice or per instance of those, they can get expensive when you try to run them 24/7. But just that flexibility of having them available, it's no differently than an Uber ride, right? Buying a car versus an Uber ride, it's there when you need it. But if I had to drive an Uber every day, that would get expensive.
So with respects to the demands that organizations have on delivery and trying to compete with, as you said, the born on cloud technologies and trying to leverage cloud technologies, is the answer to just go to the cloud? Is it that simple, or what are the things that people need to consider? You compared it to Uber and different cost considerations. What would you be considering as you're going through and evaluating this for organizations? What types of things would you consider making those decisions?
It's not for the organizations that I work with and myself. It's not about the public versus private, right? It's about the technology that you're running, or the software-defined technology that you're utilizing. So when you look at the software-defined capabilities that are in the cloud, those really have nothing to do with the computers that they're running on at the end of the day. Those technologies are available both on-prem and in the cloud. And the analogy that I like to use is, we all rent or we own a home, right? We could stay in a hotel if we chose to, but it gets a little expensive over time. So if you have 24/7 needs, it's probably better to have a home a little bit less expensive than living in a hotel all the time. Although we all like the benefits of having your room cleaned for you every day. So I think that analogy is probably the best one I can come up with. I mentioned Uber versus owning a car earlier. Those are the types of things that, just to put it in the context of folks. But when you think about like an Uber and the flexibility that creates, how convenient is that you push a button on your phone and someone shows up to your house to drive you safely where you want to go. So those types of features are available, but you're going to pay a premium for them. So I think being on premise, not to say we want to optimize where we were 10 years ago, but at the end of the day, I can use the needs that I have just as a home. It's what I need. It's not everything. It's what I need to run my business, and it gives me the flexibility that I need to operate in my life. So I think those are probably the best analogies. It's about the software and having that flexibility to scale when it's needed.
So you talk a lot about software defined and that flexibility, in business terms, what is it about the cloud technologies that make them, more resilient and able to provide that flexibility and provide that speed of response that organizations need today?
It's the elastic capability and the ease of use, right? So now you can deploy resources out to your business teams. You can have developers embedded in your business teams, and those technology resources are delivered just in time, right? So not thinking about where they are, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, doesn't really matter. It's the means in which you deliver those. We say things like Kubernetes and containers, cloud native applications and things like that, and microservices. That's that decoupling, or loosely coupled, however you want to say it, from a technology perspective, that really takes the technology right out to the business teams, right? So now I have embedded developers and technologists really working with my business teams on a just-in-time. So if you think about, if I'm working on delivering solutions for a company and I want that nimbleness, going back to the Born on Cloud folks, if I have a roadmap, it doesn't really matter how large the organization is. If I break that work down, I can deliver the compute resources to deliver those features to my business, not in an hourly basis, even a daily basis, versus, years ago we had 2 releases a month, right? Now you can have hundreds of releases a day from a feature perspective and driving business value. So it's really matching up the business need of the business value with the technology in a just-in-time world, right? At the end of the day, and there's technology is all around us. Technology is no longer the challenging factor. It's just making sure that you're utilizing it properly, and it's more about your business processes than it is about the technology now. You can't just implement cloud technologies and expect your business to be corrected. That's not what it's about. It's about how you operate every day, incrementally driving value and removing all the bureaucracy and the silos that have been created over the years from that rigidity that we talked about earlier.
So you touched on a point that I was going to ask about, which is, so cloud technologies sound great. What are organizations struggling with as far as implementing them? Why? And obviously, there's been a huge transition to the cloud. But if there are so many benefits from it, why don't we say 80% adoption at this point in time, as opposed to 25, 30% adoption at this point in time of cloud technologies, not necessarily just public cloud, like you've said?
I think it's I think that everyone should use some public cloud, not all public cloud in most cases, but it's a balance and the flexibility to have the capability to go to either one. But I think the struggle is the business processes and how you work, right? So people talk about digital transformations and things like that. What does that really mean? And I talked about in the intro about how MicroStrategies operates with delivering digital workflows and things like that. How do you optimize or make things more efficient, more resilient? And I think that folks aren't willing to go back, and because companies aren't willing to go back and really break down what their processes are and figure out what the true value-driven processes are. They just have a lot of silos and administrative things around them that you have to push through to get things done, versus being very nimble and coming up with an idea and implementing that in the technology, like I said earlier, within a day, right? So it shouldn't take so long to implement change in an organization and recognize that value. And so there's cloud technologies and the technologies that's around us, IoT, being different things, but how your business operates is the important part. It's not the cloud technologies that are given now at the end of the day. And if everyone's utilizing them in some form or fashion, when we think about what we just went through with COVID, everyone's connected from their homes, and we are using virtual desktops, we're using different types of technologies, our phones, on this video conference that we're doing right now. We weren't doing these things. Large organizations weren't doing this nearly as frequently just 90 days ago. At the end of the day, it's changed us forever in that dynamic and scalable fashion to be able to communicate effectively and really embracing it as a business. We're forever changed. The corporate office is forever changed as a result of COVID. There's no question. So you look at the positive benefits, And you go back to answering your question, why are people struggling? They couldn't get past that. It took a horrifying event like COVID to break through the corporate structures and show that people can really work dynamically and in a more real-time fashion. Just think about how we all pulled our business plans back. It was no longer 90, 120, 12-month plans. We were planning next week, right? So, I mean, I think that dynamic nature, and you go back to the earlier part of the conversation with Born on Cloud, it's all the same thing. So don't be afraid. Embrace them, accept them, and figure out how to bring them into the fold and start to deliver business value or with technology, via technology, incrementally every day. It's not I work with the IT team once a month or once every 90 days. I'm with them every day, because that's where folks are. That's when you look at an Uber and how they operate, that's how they're able to do it, delivering features just in time for their business and adapting to their customers. It's a long-winded answer.
No. You talked a lot about the change that COVID obviously kind of pushed on all of us, and how organizations had to respond. And these technologies, the cloud was kind of disrupting before COVID hit, but you didn't necessarily see organizations shifting as much per se. I mean, some were, some aren't. It depends on the core applications that they have. Do you think that with the change that COVID's brought upon us, or the impacts, I would say, that COVID has brought upon us, that these changes will really last? Do you think that people will just kind of go back to the way things were, once the dust settles and we kind of, move to the world beyond? Or do you think that these changes, especially talk about the remote workers and how people have to operate, will really start to become ingrained in what people do and kind of impacting that culture?
I mean, I believe in anti-fragile organizations, and what does that mean, right? So events, we didn't obviously create this event; it was thrust upon us. But I like to live in a world where we create disruption. The chaos monkey theory, right? Trying to throw a wrench in the wheel to test your resilience as you're moving along. So I do think this is the proportion of this and how it's hit us, it's going to change us. It's changing us at our core at the end of the day. Do I think that all the offices are going to shut down? Absolutely not. We all like to go to work, and now we miss it at this point. So we're social creatures. There's certain things we like to do in person, but I think the rigidity of traffic and the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or punching the clock, as I always say, I do think that's going to be impacted, because I think that people finally have the vision to see that making people deal with traffic on the way to work is not it's not an optimal use of anyone's time. It's not really fair. And I think the other thing we've all done is, with this technology, we've been connected 24/7. At the end of the day, children are out of school. You're not able to do things during the day. You're doing it during the evening. You're doing it during the nighttime. So I think that flexibility that's created, I don't know how we could ever go back to what it was before. And I hate to use this term, but like the desk checking that used to go on in corporate America just seems so far-fetched at this point, because of what we've been able to do. And we're resilient by nature, and I think that there are many companies out there that are surviving and thriving, as they say. And so to answer your question, I don't think it's going to go back. My hope is that we can make a big dent in traffic, because I really don't like traffic at the end of the day. So that's my
Well, so that to that point that we talk about traffic, traffic is one of our realities, or was one of our realities. Do you really think that people have a vision for what is coming in the future, or do you think that people are just really kind of dealing with the reality that's in front of them?
I think we're still dealing with the reality. I think we've all got our heads above water right now, and I do think we're starting to look at the future. But I think there are several people recognizing the benefits of what COVID did for us, right? So you think of all the lives lost and everything. I think we might end up in some cases with a better world, taking down some of the corporate structure that's around us, not all of it, but some of it, and changing minds. So I think that, I do think that, again, I think it's here. I think there's benefits that we've all realized, and I think the technology enablement that we've seen. I mean, SpaceX going to the moon, that was an amazing thing with those cameras. I was so impressed, and you think about where, you know, autonomous cars are and where things are going with IoT and things like that. I do believe that several people don't understand it, and I think that taking the time to learn and understand, was it 5-10 years ago, everyone was like, everyone should write a line of code at the end of the day, just to try and understand. So I think embracing cloud technologies and the connectedness of what we have and who we are, not to our demise by any means, or to hurt us by any means, but just to create the flexibility and such. I think it's definitely going to take time, and I think, you know, we seem to be set in our ways, and changing is a challenge. But I think we can take the time to understand it and absorb it. Yeah, just look at how people are reacting and what people want to do and how they're most productive. I think that's what, at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. You know, this is opened us up and put a lens on how we were operating, and I think that there'll be benefits well beyond COVID for sure.
So, you know, to your point, hopefully organizations are, you know, kind of putting some of that vision in place and saying, okay, what do we learn from this? Do you think, you mentioned Chaos Monkey earlier, do you think that organizations should kind of identify their Chaos Monkeys now, so they can continue to be, you know, better prepared for the future and what the future holds?
I absolutely do. And I think I don't know if I said it earlier, but I think you should have a random cycle of just something simple, right? Notify a department they're not going to be here today, right? Notify them in the morning, don't come to work. Do any type of disruptive thing on a regular basis. So, and I'm not saying that we can ever duplicate COVID, you know, it's a catastrophic event, but try to introduce more of it so that people aren't as immune to it. I mean, one of the challenges, which I think, you know, from a technology perspective, we're about to face is we've had all these corporate people in offices working in office organizations. We sent them all home to work. We gave them computers. In many cases, they didn't have laptops, so people went out and bought them, and they loaded software on them. They got them connected. So now the IT team's got everybody up and operational and things like that. And now we'll probably start to see a lot of security issues as a result of that. We just increased our attack vector by X folds, tens of thousands. God only knows how, because all these devices that were in the corporate world are now on home networks, right? So you can only imagine what that's going to do from a security perspective, what we're going to start to see in the days and weeks to come. Now, again, it's going to make us stronger, but it's something that's probably one of the next pieces that are going to happen to us. That's going to be very challenging to take on, aside from the impacts of COVID. But just that's one of the pure technology pieces.
So, Bob, as you've kind of worked with these different types of technologies and worked with organizations trying to drive business outcomes, can you share with us kind of how you're helping organizations be able to take a look at their environment, to take a look at their technologies, and be able to best utilize the the nature of what cloud technologies brings to the table, so they can deliver more quickly?
Yeah, I think there's really two things for me, and I'm all about software-defined everything. So, I mentioned containers earlier, and understanding core computing needs and setting up that scalable, dynamically scalable environment, whether that's on-prem, scaling out to cloud, taking development systems and QA systems and things like that, and really making them more dynamic. So delivering them just in time to the business teams that need the technology in real time, basically. And then setting that resiliency up, whether shooting the hybrid mix between on-premise and clouds. That's one area, really working with people, explaining to them what containers are and the dynamic elastic capability that they have, and really breaking down all those boundaries, breaking down all the silos, the technology, and the dependencies we've had on legacy technologies in the past. So that's one. I think another one that I think we've missed a little bit, and because there was a lot of bad press for many years, is the whole virtual desktop, right? So I think from a company perspective, from a corporate perspective, that a virtual desktop is a great means to keep everything out of your corporate environment from a data loss protection perspective. Even if you're at home working on your home network, or you're working on your phone, wherever you are, as long as we put everybody through that virtual desktop, we can start to control what's happening in the environment, and again, reducing the attack vector from a hacker, or from a security risk and things like that. So I think, to me, that's another component. And to me, whether it's large computer in the back office or in the public cloud, or in the data center, or a machine at home that we're using, it doesn't really matter. You want to try and make that as dynamic and elastic as possible for everyone to utilize it. So I think working with organizations and explaining those types of things to them, it creates a level of resiliency. And again, there's a thought process in my mind. It's really anti-fragility and moving forward from a business perspective. So it doesn't really matter what gets thrown at you. You can work from anywhere, anytime, and you're connected at the end of the day.
Sorry?
So
and when you're having these conversations, I was just going to say, when you're having these conversations, are the organizations listening, and do you have some examples of how you've helped them implement this and the value that they've driven from trying to think about their organizations differently?
Yeah, different examples. And again, I think it's to get around the bring your any device. I think that's where the virtual desktops come in. I think from a security perspective, business value perspective, and really trying to move away from the corporate network, right? So now we want to get connected to our data centers. We don't want to have people coming directly in using things like VPN and things like that. Putting cloud clients in the public cloud, giving them access into those data centers, and really you can eliminate the corporate network in many cases. So because when you look at all the SaaS solutions that are out there, or the public-facing solutions that are available to folks, utilizing those, it's just one more level. Now we can take those legacy technologies and make them available in a public cloud world, and you don't lose any of the security from that perspective of being in your data center. So I think providing that visibility is extremely important. And again, it just creates the resilience of access from anywhere at the end of the day.
So would you say that they're listening to you? I mean, would you say that organizations are responding and you're implementing this with them?
Yes, I think that they are. And I think that, like I said earlier, my concern right now is some of the problems we're about to hit from enabling everyone from home. I think we'll be having more conversations as well. When you start to understand what problem we've created with where we are with COVID and everyone being in the house, before we get back to the office, I think you're going to start to see problems. And the other challenge is, I think the expectation has been set. People are not going to want to be chained to their desk anymore at the end of the day. So if I'm operating a technology team, how can I manage those types of situations? And it's really providing a virtual world versus a fixed world where I'm responsible for that desktop. I let you bring your own desktop to work and your own phone. I provide a virtual environment on it, and we're good to go. The same thing from a back-end technology perspective for a business. If I need compute capacity or technologies to deliver a business process, I can deliver that from private cloud on-prem or public cloud. I just need to give you the access to it so you can see it. You shouldn't have to worry about everything that's going on the back end. As long as everything's software defined, it will work in very simplistically. It'll be very smooth.
And do you see organizations who have taken advantage of this and the values that they've or the benefits that they've achieved?
I think we see it every day. I think from when you look at the back-end core technologies and you look at the scalability of a Netflix, or you look at Azure, all these platforms, teams, everything is scaled dramatically. They're all using cloud technologies. There's no question. There are businesses that are adding millions of virtual desktops. I think there's an article out there where Azure added 32,000 developers in 2 days, basically, to create a virtual desktop for them. So the technology is available. It's rather straightforward to roll out. And we're only providing what we need. We're not building these large, not antiquated, but it's like when you look at the Office products, I'm not sure about you, but I use about 1% of Word and Excel. I don't need the other 99%. But so what we're delivering is a just-in-time solution for the folks. And again, go back to those comments we made earlier about being loosely coupled. You don't want the connections that are have any rigidity to them, whether that's to my corporate machine, my data center, my public cloud, whatever it is, or people. At the end of the day, I don't want people to be forced to be in the same room together to work at the end of the day. So that same mindset of the loosely coupled processes and technology being delivered is really what it's all about.
And how would you measure, or how would you know that they're getting the benefit from it?
the business results at the end of the day. So if I understand what my ultimate, my business drivers are, right? We all have to have a plan. Not that the plan doesn't change, but what differentiates you as a business? What is it that you bring to the table? And then I hate to say the age old fashioned of profit, but at the end of the day, if the business is delivering and we're operating efficiently and generating the revenues that we expect, or the goodness that we expect, right? Whatever that is, whether that's community service, social awareness, whatever the case may be, you start to see those benefits. And again, I think it will come through in the numbers of the business, because at the end of the day, we're, obviously there's nonprofits out there, but most businesses are in the business to generate revenue and take care of their people, I guess is the best way to say it. So I think you see that harmonious nature in the numbers, basically.
So Bob, with all of your experiences that you've had, what would you kind of say is the biggest challenge that we should keep our eyes on as we look forward to the next 2 years?
I think as technology becomes, into our lives more and more every day, and like I said, in the last 90 days, it's been more a part of our lives than it has in our lifetimes, and the connectedness that we've had, just from a human perspective, being aware of how connected you are and things like that. So I think that's going to be important over the next few months, because how we get away and how we walk away from it. So that's from a human factor side. From a security perspective and safety perspective, being connected is being connected. So being aware of what you are, who you're interacting with, and those things, and putting the right, from a business perspective, putting the right roles and responsibilities in place to make sure that things are secure. And then from a, look for the opportunities, I guess. I don't, like I mentioned traffic earlier. I mean, I just think it'd be amazing if we can eliminate it. So what's the next cool thing that we can do to help the planet, to help all of us, give us time back in the day, just make us generally happier at the end of the day, with better quality of life. So I think look for those opportunities, because I know that technology can get us there at the end of the day. So those are probably the three things. Just don't be too connected. Make sure you can step away. Make sure you're secure, both personally and professionally, from your businesses, and then really look for the next opportunity. It's the next game changer that's going to come about.
Any other final parting thoughts that you would want to leave with everyone?
I think that I've said this before, the disruptors or the born on cloud companies that are out there, it's not about the technology they're utilizing that's available to everyone. It's about how you use it. That's a big one. And we say older companies, newer companies, all those fun things. It's about how you operate the technology. I've said this a few times, but for me, it's about software-defined everything. So whether that's containers and Kubernetes, or BYOD, or virtual desktops, it's really about the flexibility of private and public cloud, being able to scale from cloud to cloud, wherever you need to be. That's the mindset you should have, and you should be delivering that technology to your business just in time to generate that value. And then I think the last thing, which again I think COVID has helped us with, we have to disrupt ourselves. We can't sit around and start to cut nickels and dimes everywhere and become so rigid again that we can't operate when we take a shock. You have to take a shock, learn from it, and get stronger at the end of the day. So I think those are probably the top three for me. The technology is available now. If you'd like to talk about it, I'd be happy to do so. But there's really nothing we can't accomplish in business these days, as long as we have a creative idea that people are interested in at the end of the day. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate the conversation, and I look forward to all the creative things and the disruption that you're going to bring to the table to help organizations drive that business outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.